Hi, Laura. Welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to sit with you here virtually in our little chat room.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited too. I can't wait to be here and see what we get into.
I know. So, why don't we start off with you just telling everyone who you are and where you're at and the work that you do? We'll just dive in after
Yeah,
that.
amazing. So, my name's Laura Niblack. I'm from Maine and I started my business, The Wild Pine, 8 years ago, just out of a tiny little studio in my apartment. I just love working in silver and casting botanicals. My business is called The Wild Pine. I don't know if I said that yet. Did I?
There's
We'll just be
no,
redundant.
yeah, there's no harm in
I
saying it again.
I really like pine trees, so might as well just gab about that all day long. But yeah, my work focuses on casting botanicals, particularly pine cones. I love hiking and skiing and foraging here in Maine. And so on every single one of my adventures, I'll forage some pine cones or botanicals
Um,
and then cast them in silver and then incorporate that into my work and just try to really share my love of New England and just the outdoors through creating wearable mementos that people can wear to remind them of the hikes they've been on or just make them feel closer to nature through my work. I also just have a huge passion for Maine mine minerals. Say that three times fast, Maine
yeah.
mine minerals. And there's a lot of different mines around here that I love visiting and working with the minerals specifically even found on our land here in Maine.
Oh, that'd be so
Um,
cool.
oh, it's so cool. I think it was really a dream come true when we moved here because I felt a lot closer to the land and what I was most inspired by. And so now I can take like tourmaline, which is the main
Oh,
state stone,
it's my
and
favorite.
some of the highest grade tourmaline in the world actually is mined in Maine, which is crazy. So
Wow,
it's the
yeah.
state stone. There's one of the top mines in the country. Where some of the most incredible tourmaline is found is only 20 minutes from our house, which
Oh,
was
wow.
mind blowing. And so now it just feels surreal to be able to take pine cones that I've cast here in Maine and then tourmaline that was literally mined down the road from us and then incorporate that into jewelry. So I love what I do. I'm in my 8th year of it. Yeah. And I also, it's funny, I've kind of become known for by accident. My huskies. I have two huskies that
Hmm.
I am obsessed with. And when I
Beautiful.
thanks. When I very first started my business, on a whim, I was like, oh, I just taught my older husky, Minka, how to balance treats on her nose. What if I could have her balance turquoise on her nose or jewelry on her nose
Yeah.
or on her paws? And so I took a few photos like that and they oddly went viral, which was hilarious because I don't think anybody had
I
seen that
saw
at the
those. They were
time.
so great.
Isn't that random?
I'm
And
like,
so that
mine
was
would
a,
never sit still.
oh, she's like an angel, but it was a really cool way of connecting with customers and then just having this shared love of dogs. And it even sparked like during the pandemic, there was a whole see a dog, send a dog trend where I think people are just trying to connect more on social media. And so
Yeah,
people started doing see a pine cone, send a pine cone for me specifically, which was so sweet. And it was people balancing pine cones or my pine cone jewelry on
that's
their
so
pets and
that's
then
so
sending
cool.
them. I literally had, I kid you not, a rabbit that was balancing pine cone necklaces, a chameleon, which blew my mind, a horse, some sheep, people just sending their pets in. So it kind of became this really cool organic way to
That's
connect with
awesome.
people. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, well, you know your love then. That is just that's crazy. That's
I
absolutely
know.
crazy.
I feel so grateful that I found my community of people that also love the outdoors and are quirky as well
Oh
and
yeah.
like just being a little goofy. Because that's just kind of how I am in real life. So we
Yeah.
like to keep it fresh and fun.
Yeah. So then how did you get started? How did you begin your journey into metalsmithing and kind of fall in love with stones and metal?
Yeah, so it's kind of a roundabout way, but I went to school just for art in general in Illinois, and then worked at a camp in the summers and
Mhm.
really fell in love with being a wilderness guide. And then eventually met my husband that way. Well, I guess I met him as my boyfriend. Anyway, and so found a husband on a tree. No, so we got married right out of college and um had like no money and didn't really know what to do. So we decided to move closer to family back here on the east, and I just really wanted to do something with art, and so I immediately went to work for anthropology, building window
Oh,
displays.
wow.
Which was really
Oh, I
cool in a
love
way
their
that I could,
displays. It's really
yeah, so
fun.
I was able to kind of use my art and be very tactile, which was really fun, but it kind of got really monotonous and intense, spending like 8 hours a day, like in a dark room, making 1,000 leaves for like a tree or whatever. So I was like, I kind of miss, I miss interacting with people. So I went into management and really enjoyed it. I had a really positive experience, but I went to the other end of the pendulum where I just really missed making art, but art specifically for myself, as a way to just have self-expression. And so my husband recommended, hey, why don't you just take an art class of something that you're interested in after work? And so I had always been super enamored with sterling silver jewelry and particularly turquoise. I had a really cool collection that my grandmother started for me. She got me a really beautiful Navajo turquoise ring, and I was super interested and loved it. So I was like, oh my gosh, it would be really cool to take a metalsmithing class. And so I found a local class at this studio called Metalwork Studio in
Mhm.
Waltham, Massachusetts. They're incredible. Just a little shout out to them. But I took a Metalsmithing 101 class. It was 8 weeks long, only a few hours a
Yep.
week. And shocker, I became absolutely obsessed with all things metal and stones. So much so that I couldn't even focus on work. Like literally all I did was research new techniques. I saved up money to get my own setup, fully intending for it to be a hobby. But then things at work just got way too cumbersome. And then on top of that, we decided to get a dog, which was a
Mhm.
dream come true. We got Minka. 8 years ago, and basically taking the metalsmithing class and things at work getting hard and getting a new puppy all became a catalyst for me to one day just be crazy and quit my job. And I quit my job and then told my husband, I was like, "I just quit my job. I'm gonna start a metalsmithing business." And he's like, Wait, what? We didn't even discuss this. This is crazy." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's gonna be great." So I just had this like naive confidence and gumption and excitement to just
Yeah.
try to also just working in retail management. I never saw my husband. He also was in retail management. So we never had days off together. I couldn't see friends. And so it just
Oh,
became unsustainable. So I was like, you know
yeah.
what? If I have my own business and I can just build it from the ground up, I can spend time with my dog
Yep.
and actually see my husband and my friends and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so it oddly worked. I mean, it was definitely lots and lots of months and years of hard work and um trial and error, but
Sure.
once I figured out, I stumbled upon just a design that really resonated with people like early on, and that was making ear jackets with turquoise.
Well, I
And
remember
at that
those.
yeah, and at that point like ear jackets existed, but I don't think anyone had, at least to my knowledge, had done that specific style with the sterling silver and the turquoise and the bezels. So that was really, really cool. I came up with it like on a whim and then people loved it. And so I connected with a bunch of people on Instagram. And then that's kind of where I started um, gaining traction and then just kind of went with it. And then got super hyper fixated. And all I did was metalsmith day in and day out of this teeny tiny little um, it was a sunroom in our 500 square foot apartment that
Mhm.
literally was 8 feet by 3 feet, and I put a bench in there
Yeah.
and just stacked everything up really, really high, and it was too small for even my chair to fit in there, so I had to open up the window or the door, and my chair literally straddled the door frame, but it worked. Like, you
Yeah.
really don't need
You
much
make it
space for
work.
metalsmithing.
Yep.
So after about 2 years, my business, I was so grateful it outgrew that space. And honestly, Isaac, my husband, was like, I kind of want our coffee table back because I would package
Yeah.
orders on our coffee table, and then our kitchen table was like for laying out designs and stones. So I eventually found a really cool studio space in a general store that was in our town, and I was friends with the owner, and I moved into that studio space. And that was really amazing to be able to spread out. And I was able to kind of scale my business a little bit. And then that's when I discovered um, or came up with like the pine cone necklaces as kind of like a wearable memento. It all began because, like I said, because of the pandemic. I was like, I want to make something that's people feel like they can connect with one another by being in like a pine cone club, if you will, and something that's at a more accessible price point for people. Um, so then it was really cool. I was able to on and off hire a part-time assistant and just get to the point of making massive amounts of pine cone jewelry while also on the side being able to focus on like new designs and challenge myself with um, additional classes at Metalworks and other different metalsmith studios where I learned how to prong set and work with raw minerals. And yeah, so it kind of just
Yeah.
took off from there. And then 2.5 years ago, my husband and I found our dream home here in Maine. Like I said, we just love recreating outside. And so I was really excited to move into a home studio again that actually was big enough to fit a
Hmm.
chair in.
Yeah.
um, and so now I work out of my home.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of how it all began and how it's still kind of going. And I just love, love, love what I do, even though you know how it is when you own your own
Yeah.
business, you work all the time,
Yeah. I
but it's
love
very fulfilling.
I love that you said that when you were at the anthropology, you just got tired of sitting in a room and cutting out leaves, thousands of leaves. And now you're doing in another room, you're doing pine cones.
That's so funny. That's so true. You got me. Oh my gosh. At least this room though has windows now.
Yeah. No, that's important. That's really
But it's
important.
so true. It's so true. It's funny. Same but
Yeah.
different.
So, at what point were you kind of like, because there's some trial and error for a while,
Oh
and
yeah.
things you just generally you don't become an overnight success as soon as you launch. So, at what point did you really kind of feel like, yep, this is going to work, and I can see that it's working?
Yeah.
What point in your journey did that kind of come about?
Oh gosh. I feel like it probably I'm so messy in that I didn't even have a business plan or like
No.
I barely knew what I was doing. I'm definitely an experiential learner. So it was more helpful for me to just teach myself new techniques and then do the trial and error of how I was going to sell my jewelry. But
Yeah.
I stumbled upon Instagram pretty early on. It's so funny now that I was so hesitant to start at the beginning, and my sister, who's younger than me, was like, "No, it's a really cool platform. You're gonna love it." And I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
no, I'm not." And now it literally is my primary way of connecting with people and sharing my work. It's crazy. And that's how I met you, which
Yeah.
is incredible. Um, but I would say probably about 6 months in, I just was showing up very consistently. I would post pretty much every single day different work that I was doing and started sharing a little bit behind the scenes of who I was and what I was interested in. And then literally just kept showing up and creating new work. So I would say it took about I would say 6 months to really get big traction, but there was a lot of trial and error in there. I think it went from, like, the naive excitement and gumption for about 3 months, and then after that, when there was an ebb and flow, kind of an ebb in sales, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done?" And I got pretty anxious, and it was really intense, but, at that point, had garnered so much incredible support from my community, especially my husband, who supported me in my
Mhm.
chaos. and kind of gave me, I was able to take all of the money that I had made from anthropology and then also in the business and invest it back into the business. So it was kind of like running itself. Um, but I feel like once people were really excited about the ear jackets at first, that was when it felt sustainable because constantly people were like, when are you going to make more? When are you going to make more? And I had some other artist friends that I connected with that were like, you should probably consider raising your prices a little bit. And I was
Yeah.
like, no, I can't. That's so scary. And they were like, no, like the work that you're doing, it takes a really long time to make each thing by hand. And you need to look at the materials. And I just had different friends along the way that also had um, creative businesses that just kind of let me see a little bit behind the scenes of how they did their finances, how they priced their work. And
Yeah.
so kind of through it almost felt like Jenga building like the
Yeah.
different building blocks of learning where my customers were, what I wanted to do, how I could do it sustainably and financially, how to do it all legally with like QuickBooks and all that kind of stuff. So I'd say about a year in was when I started making profit, like a significant profit where I was able to kind of start to support our family. And that's when I felt like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I could keep doing this forever, which was really
Yeah.
crazy and really cool.
I think getting in early, especially to Instagram, I'm always the late one. I just kind of, I look at it for a while and like, okay. And threads I started in fairly early and I was like, this is not for me.
I
But,
know that's kind
that's
of
such
how
a
I was
helpful
too.
thing. And that's the same thing with Etsy. It was like people, including myself, that were early on Etsy. It's like that really helped propel our
Oh
business.
yeah.
Did you sell on Etsy at all, or did you
I
start with your
totally
own?
for that was a puzzle piece that I forgot, but I started on Etsy too.
Mm,
Just because I didn't at that point it was all word of mouth. So I was either just selling to at first family, incredible, like the support there, but then it was friends of family and then friends of friends and friends of friends. But at some point you can't keep asking those people to, so I was trying to find a customer base. And so I started on Etsy as well. And it was fantastic at first. I remember when I made my very first sale, I thought it was an error. Like I hadn't told anybody that I had started a jewelry business and I
mm.
just started uploading listings and just like testing different things and taking product videos or product photos. And then all of a sudden one of the products disappeared and I was like, "Oh no, I thought I had uploaded this. Like what's going on?" And I went to go look at it and it was like a sale. So whoever you are, Michaela, thank you so much
I
for
know.
randomly finding a listing that in a shop that had only opened for a month. Yeah, and she purchased it and I was able to send it off and it felt like this really cool, fun, surreal moment. But I'm sure like it was for you, it worked
Oh,
until
absolutely.
it didn't work. It was really nice to have like a search engine where people could just search,
Yeah.
like go to a specific site and search like turquoise jewelry or
Yeah.
pinecone jewelry and then find you that way. But it got to a point where the fees were a little much and I
Yeah.
had found most of um my sales references were coming via Instagram. So that's when I took the plunge and did my own platform
Yeah,
on Shopify.
I left Etsy fairly early just because
Mm,
that's when I started making a change in my own business and kind of went from having a shop name of Bloom Studios to going to myself and then putting my
yeah,
work out there in magazines. And so it
that
was
was
the
cool.
whole balancing of, your image. I was being told you don't want to be on Etsy at that point. But at the same time, I look at some of my friends that started early on with me that are still on there and they're
Hmm.
killing it. I mean, they are just
Yeah.
because they started early and stayed the course, regardless of the changes. And, also started their own websites as well. But it's like, as long as you didn't walk away from it, I think it was a pretty
Yeah.
good thing.
Or just the
But yeah, I mean, I was
consistency or
there, what, 97, 98. So it was really pretty good then.
oh
Still
yeah,
so
because
pure.
it wasn't as saturated
Yeah. Yeah.
or messy.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. I
Yeah.
think that's like one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got and then I could give to other fledgling artists is consistency, is just constantly showing up, like finding an avenue that works and just really showing up every single day.
Yeah. And that, yeah, I kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit with you because you're so good with that. I mean, honestly, your presence, on Instagram has just been amazing. And one of the things that I really love, because our customers, they don't get that face-to-face time with the artist. And so
Yeah.
many of us, myself included, you know, just it's easy to show pictures of our work and not ourselves as much. And one of the things I really just have loved about you is I would have to say 95% of your photos with you, you have the biggest grin on your face. And you're like, I mean, I feel like I want to know this girl. I want to spend time with her. She looks like a lot of fun. And you've done such a wonderful job of just sharing your love of the wilderness, your personal life, to a certain extent, a peek into your jewelry world. It's been a really nice balance. And I think that's so important for your customers to kind of fall in love with you that way, as well as your community. Um, and you've done that in such an authentic, genuine way. You don't feel like it's staged. There's nothing about that. And so I
Thank
guess
you.
you're welcome. And own that, really own that. I always think that if I lived in a beautiful environment, I would have so much more to post about because where I live, it's not. I mean, I live in a wooded setting, but we don't have, the wilderness. I love being around the ocean. I work with,
Mm,
some shells every once in a while still, but I can't go out there and snap pictures of the ocean all the time. It doesn't tie into my work. So,
yeah.
you know, I guess that what I'd like to kind of ask is, do you have thoughts how other people, other artists can share themselves authentically and build that connection even when they feel like their lives are a little boring?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. Well, first off, thank you so much for all the kind
Sure.
compliments. That really means a lot. And I just love connecting with people in that in facets like that. But I would say it's really interesting that you say that because I started my business in the suburbs of Massachusetts and I wasn't super excited about being there. We kind of lived in a dingy neighborhood, and an apartment that was literally falling apart, which was hilarious to me. I'm so glad we were able to move out when we did.
Mhm.
But I too felt like, oh, I live in the suburbs. Like I wish that I was like in nature more. And I would literally live for the weekends when we were able to actually make it up north here to Maine. But I think it was really cool in a way and challenged me in a way to see the magic in the everyday, and really forced me to like, I think I initially started with trying to engage in the natural world in just my own neighborhood by learning urban foraging and how to
Mhm.
identify different edible plants. And then through getting into that and just learning more about all of the things you think are pretty benign and boring or banal, if you will. Just like weeds in the sidewalk and like different trees and
Oh, sure.
squirrels and just stuff that seems very basic, learning more about that and then getting really, really stoked on it and then sharing just little slices of life of the really boring details, if you will, got me really excited about it and therefore got other people really excited about it. And I think that's where I got into just kind of finding the beauty in the everyday, um, and not just constantly having the wanderlust of being like, I wish I wasn't here. I wish I was somewhere else. And also, the benefit too was that it forced me to spend more time in my studio instead of being distracted
No,
and
that's
getting
true. Summer's
outside.
coming for me. I'm not going to be in the studio very
You're
much.
like, yay. Well, now it's like I have the opposite problem where I'm like, oh gosh, I feel so lucky that I'm able to live amongst such beauty. And I just always want to be outside and do stuff outside.
Yeah.
But I think that would be my advice for people is, or people that it's hard because it's all an attitude, like having the positive mental attitude and really trying to see the silver linings in the everyday, which is so much easier said than done.
Right.
But I think also lockdown really forced me to try to view all of the wonderful, exciting things that I can do in my own neighborhood, and all the nature that was all around me that I was taking for granted. And so that's when we started. It was crazy. I think a lot of people think that we were always in Maine, but we weren't. Like literally, we were harvesting just random these choke cherries from trees around our
Hmm.
neighborhood, and then we made jam. Like literally, if you were to see this neighborhood, you're like, there's nothing edible here that's from the wild. We literally tapped a maple tree that was in this gross driveway of a neighbor's, and we boiled down 40 cups of syrup or 40 cups of sap to make 1 cup of syrup, like literally in this gross neighborhood.
Yeah.
But it was so fun and exciting. We foraged a ton of fiddleheads that were in like the weird marshland behind the neighborhood. So it was just kind of like finding the joy in the everyday and then naturally sharing it on Instagram in particular and getting to geek out with other people because it felt really accessible. I'm like, there are so many cool edible weeds in your yard.
Yep.
Let's do like I did a quick photo series on you can eat this, this, and this, and then literally had really cool people popping into my DMs being like, look what I found in my yard. And what do you think of this? And this and that. And through being able to connect with people over the simple things in life, I think naturally went into connecting over jewelry.
Yeah.
So,
But I also think too, um, that really works with your inspiration and your work in general. During COVID, I studied herbalism. I went down that path in the same thing.
yes, I
But if
remember
I
that.
would post something, it was kind of like crickets because my
Mm,
style and my interests change all the time.
yeah,
And my work will change sometimes. It's a little more, like right now, a little more industrial, a
yeah.
little darker. So with you being able to have that love and have that background of being a wilderness guide and that love for the outdoors and your work is inspired by that as well, it really seems still as cohesive as can be. Where me,
Oh
I
gosh,
love to
thank you.
scuba dive, but
Yeah.
that's not going to really inspire my work for
I
long.
mean, it
I
could.
it might, like when I missed living in Hawaii, I would certainly make pieces that kind of brought
Yeah.
me back to that, but it wouldn't last for long. And so, I guess one of the things I'd like to know is, has
Mhm.
there been a time that you've just really felt like you wanted to explore something different, something, a different style within your work? Or have you always just kind of maintained this is really what I love to do?
Oh gosh, I feel like that's a really great question. Um, because I mean, yeah, I think I got so many people early on warned me about burnout. And they were like, you're going really, really hard and really hyper fixating on things. And also, to be fully candid, I have bipolar disorder.
Hmm.
And so early on, I wasn't diagnosed and didn't know the patterns that my brain worked in. And so when I was manic, I would get super hyper fixated and literally work 12 hours a day, just churning out work like hardcore, all the exact same um stuff, like lots and lots of turquoise, lots and lots of ear jackets, like so many studs, just stuff like that. um and then I mean it's a whole other story with how I got diagnosed and stuff, but then when I would go into kind of the depressive episodes, I would feel burnt out, and kind of over the past 8 years have fallen in and out of love even with metalsmithing in general, and had
Hmm.
like crises where I'm like, I put all my eggs in one basket. What am I going to do? But I think what really helped with, I mean, A, getting medicated and getting a therapist
Yeah.
to help learn how my brain works, but then also exploring other avenues within metalsmithing. And I think something that totally, utterly changed the game for me, where I felt like I had fallen out of love with metalsmithing, was taking a prong setting class. Oh my gosh, it opened up so many new horizons. Instead of just doing the typical, very not typical, but that classic style that I learned to do, which was like the Southwestern inspired
Mhm.
designs and working with like the bezels and the rope detailing and that like very classic Western design. And
Sure.
then um it was just like a whole new world being able to take any object, any raw stone, and then incorporate that into my jewelry. And then it through going down a totally different route and working more with stones that were native to the Northeast and just like raw gems and crystals. I was like, this is what's interesting to me. And I felt at some point when I was really burnt out, I felt beholden to creating the same jewelry that people wanted to see from me and really fell out of love with it and wanted to quit at certain times.
Yeah.
But once I kind of learned the prong setting class and then also learned a lot of other different techniques, just through taking random classes here and there, I was like, gosh, I fell in love with it again. And then what was cool is coming full circle and being able to take some of the original works that I had come up with, but then translating them into prong set styles. Um, so I think I went from just all cabochons, all turquoise, all classic Southwestern designs, but with pine trees. That was my
Yeah.
little signature. It's all that stayed consistent. To moving into more of like an organic, very wilderness driven, inspired style with prong setting and really making it all about the stones, and telling different stories and being more inspired by the seasons here in New England too, which was like huge, and starting to cast botanicals that I found through each season. So I started a autumn in New England collection, and that's when I feel most inspired is oh my gosh, have you ever experienced fall in New England?
No, but we have there is we're near some county parks, and there's a few even down south a little bit further that are just incredible. And even around the lake for us, it's
Oh
absolutely
yeah.
beautiful. So, yeah, we experience a beautiful fall as well.
Oh gosh, especially near Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Um, so naturally, I'm so drawn to all the colors and just feel so
Mm-hmm.
inspired. And so when I started kind of viewing my work in it like seasonally, that's when I really rekindled the flame when I would find periods of burnout, especially like with the ebb and flow of my mood disorder. So that was really cool. So now I would say I do like 6 or maybe even 70% of my work and sales like the last 3 months of the year. Whereas because I'm just so inspired
Oh,
by
yeah.
fall, and so I'll just collect stones all year round that remind me of autumn, and then just tell different stories all and, like, even start it really early, like in August, but, like, squirrel the pieces away, and then just I feel like the narrative and my excitement for what's happening around me is just pours out so organically during then, so, and then being able to take those designs and do prongs. Oh my gosh, I love prongs.
Yeah, and I think I've seen some of the pieces now that you're talking about it, because I know your work right away. But now thinking about it, I remember like there was a necklace, and they think they look like raw Montana agates
Oh,
maybe,
they were,
and they were
citrine slices.
okay. And yeah,
Yeah.
but it still very much look like your work, and part of that's the photography and the presence within everything else, the layering
Oh, thank
within
you.
the story. Um, yeah, I think for a lot of us, the fall through Christmas is busy time anyway. So that's great that that's when you naturally want to produce more work. For me, it's like, uh-oh, winter's coming. So then I'm pulling out the opposite colors. Let's get the
Yeah.
pastels out because I don't want to see winter.
You're like, "No."
Everything is counterintuitive to what I should be doing.
Well,
So,
there's no shoulds, I think. It's like whatever your muse is. Like, I love watching the ebb and flow of your work too. I can see your different inspirations and stuff. Your work is so incredible and inspiring,
oh,
especially like
thank you. That's very
your
nice.
details. Oh my gosh. Like sometimes I just lust over how incredible you are at soldering those teeny tiny baby details on and constantly coming up with unique designs. Like your sister's not twins earrings. I have a
Mhm.
pair of them myself. An early fan. Anyway, I have a Christine original. Um, I just love like seeing that. I think it's just so cool and inspiring. So I
Yeah,
can
it's always
see,
fun to see everyone else's work and,
yeah, and
it's
how
just
like
those little
though like
things.
different creative minds work.
Yeah. So then would you say to kind of get through some of those, you know, um, burnout times and blocks that it's just kind of switching gears or and maybe trying a new class, or do you just kind of walk away from it at all for a little bit?
Oh yeah. I would say also a huge um part of like staying like satisfied creatively is what I like to call creative cross training, where I pick up different weird hobbies that are very low stakes. So like I've tried yeah, just like
Yep.
throwaway art. I know that sounds weird, but
No.
like I got really really into embroidery for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was trying to spend less time on my phone at night cuz I'm weird. I always have to have a secondary activity when we're watching TV just cuz I think I'm just such a my mind is always active. So I would sometimes spend time scrolling my phone and I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. And I want to be creative. So I got into embroidery and like really hyper fixated on it for a few months. And so that was like my little creative cross training for then, because then you
Yeah.
can kind of translate the things that you discover in embroidery into that. And then for a while, I got really into adult coloring books. And then, like, literally, yeah, I was like, oh my God, all I want to do is color. This is so great. And I got a bunch of friends into it. And then I got really into making friendship bracelets, but like the little kid ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a huge renaissance with friendship
Oh
bracelet
yeah.
making with Taylor Swift. And I'm a fan. So I was like, I'm just gonna make a ton to just to give to friends. And like I got a whole bead set and it kind of became this really cool thing that I would do with friends and for friends when people would come over, especially new friends. We would just sit around the table and have something to do. So it was a little less awkward when you're getting to know one another. So I think by combining just like throwaway art, if you will, or just low stakes art also really helps inspire my work. Um, or kind of take the pressure off. And then yes, I do sometimes will step away for a while. Like after a really busy holiday season, we're
Yeah.
huge, huge skiers, and I volunteer for a nonprofit that teaches backcountry skiing or uphill skiing. And so I spend my winters pretty much every weekend teaching women uphill skiing and just connecting with the wilderness in that way. And then we'll kind of do a little bit of jewelry work on the side, but I really kind of go really hard during the holidays so I can take more time off to ski and enjoy all those things after purposely burning myself out over the holidays. So taking a look after a really busy period, just taking time to kind of work in another way and like volunteer and just engage with skiing. And like I love winter. I'm like one of those weirdos that a lot of
Yep.
people yeah, I know. When we moved to Maine, people were like, "Why are you moving to Maine? You know what the winters are like, right?" And I'm like, "That's why we're moving to Maine. We have 2 huskies. We love skiing with them. We love snow." And I grew up skiing, so I think that's like makes it a little less intimidating because I just like being in the cold. I'm a northern kind of folk. But then it was cool because there was one time where I got a little too lazy and wasn't working, like, at all, and all I was doing was skiing, and I'm like, "I need to contribute to our mortgage payments now, and this is a little stressful, on my sweet poor husband." So I started doing a ski-inspired collection where I, specifically got, cut cabs that looked like, black diamonds, which are
Mm-hmm.
um, signify some of the hardest runs on a ski mountain or a ski resort. And so that was another way of rekindling the flame for metalsmithing after a burnt out time was just being like, what am I enjoying doing right now? It's skiing, it's spending time outside, it's being with my dogs. So yeah, it's an ebb and a flow. And I don't always love metalsmithing. And I think that, especially for new artists, I think that it's almost good to share that as a more
Yeah.
seasoned business owner. Be like, you're not always going to love this. And just because you hate it for like say a week or even a month doesn't mean that it's not for you anymore.
Yeah.
You'll fall back in love with it, and it's just a consistency. So yeah.
Yeah, and well, as far as the winter thing goes, you live in an area that's really, really beautiful. So that would be much more,
Actually,
exciting.
are you ready for this? This will blow your mind. Do you want to know where I learned to ski?
Hmm.
Indiana, where you're from.
Really? Oh
Yep,
my gosh.
at a
I mean,
tiny little mountain.
yes, I did too. And then we went out to Colorado. I learned right before I was going to a trip on Colorado, and I felt
Oh,
so
that's
good because I went
intense.
down the biggest hill that they had at the end of the day, with my first lessons. And I went to Colorado, and when we went up to the first slope and the beginner hill, the first drop was bigger than
Oh
the
my
the
gosh.
biggest hill that I learned on.
Dude, Colorado's like a different beast.
Yeah, so I was like, I
This
don't know
is
about
might
this.
not be for me.
And everybody doesn't know what they're doing and they're all over the place. That's so
But
funny.
it is, yeah, it is funny. I grew up in Ohio for like a hot minute. We were there for 5 years, and my dad taught us to ski at Perfect North Slopes in Indiana.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, and I don't know about you, but when I pick up those little side art projects, I've done the embroidery too. And
Yeah, what else have you done? I'm curious.
oh God, I did mosaics, stained glass,
Cool. Oh my gosh, I would
yeah,
love to learn stained glass.
embroidery, pottery, photography. Oh gosh.
And
I
what's
don't
cool
even
is it
know.
kind of when you have so many different interests, and are a jack of all trades, it really
Yeah.
lends itself to being a creative small business owner. So I
Making
can
my
see
own
that with you if you're,
incense.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you're
All of that.
constantly inspired and have so
But
many different interests. Yeah.
but you know what? Where I was going with that is every time I pick something up like that, I discover that I don't love it the way I love metalsmithing.
Ooh,
And
that's
so it
helpful.
almost always reinforces and gets me excited to go back and sit at the bench again.
Ooh, see, that's the quote that you're going to use to promote this podcast conversation. That is huge. I almost like want to write that down. Wow.
No, you
Yeah,
have to have
just
the quote.
no, no, you're the one that made all this incredibleness happen. Wow, just like reinforcing the love, because that was going to be my next question, was how do you know that metalsmithing is for you? And I think you answered it in that eloquent sentence.
Yeah, it's kind of like when we were talking about casting before we started. It's like, it's
Yeah.
cool, it's neat to know that, but you just pulled back to the actual metalsmithing portion
Yeah.
of it. And it's like, there's certain techniques I think that we always kind of fall back on and just love. Or
Yeah,
certain
and I think
stones,
that's, oh yeah, you with the tourmaline.
Well,
Dude,
we
you got
both
to
love
come
color.
visit.
We both love, yeah, I do. I want to come out there and
There
dig
is the most
around.
incredible Maine mineral museum here that just has the most nuts slices and specimens of tourmaline.
Oh God.
Um, but anyway, I think that's what's cool too is with metalsmithing, it's so satisfying too when you find your niche and you find what really
Hmm.
works for you, and then you're able to really, instead of being spread thin, you can really focus on the things that inspire you most.
Yeah.
Like we said, I took a wax carving class and was like, this isn't for me. I took a lapidary little spin into lapidary and was
Yep.
like, this is really cool, but I want to spend more time physically making the jewelry, or even doing all my castings myself. I cast the original organic ones and then work with a friend to do mold and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's really cool when you're able to do the trial and error of like what you really love. And then it just organically lends itself to promoting that work or sharing it with people, because people can see when you're doing what you absolutely love and what you have found to be your talent that gives you fulfillment, then people will see that and naturally be drawn to your work.
Yeah. And I think, I have some lapidary equipment too, and it's been helpful when a stone breaks or when you want to,
Oh yeah.
adjust something to fit your too small bezel that you just made. Um,
Me all the time.
yeah.
I actually use my
But I
flex
mean, it
shaft too.
really, yeah, yeah. It works in a pinch. Um,
Really.
I think it gives you such an appreciation for the broader picture of what you do then and all the parts that go into that, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love metalsmithing. I feel like it's given me so much, especially with having a mental illness, bipolar disorder. Because like always growing up, I guess getting deep for a second,
Yeah.
but always growing
Go.
up, I was pretty chaotic. Especially when now I can look back and be like, wow, I was either really manic at that point, and like that's why I was hyper and unable to focus and like loud and made really rash decisions. But I did have people tell me that like you can't focus, you're too brash, you're too impulsive, you can't do details. I even had a professor once that wouldn't let me cut out my own photos because he was like, you're too imprecise and you're gonna mess up and make it look bad. Or you just can't focus. Tons of times people would
Hmm.
say that to me, and it was just really damaging and like really hurt my feelings. But then
Sure.
learning metalsmithing, it almost helped me take my power back in a way where I was like, you know what? This is the thing where I can become really hyper fixated and really detail oriented. And like, this is something that I'm good at. And it's almost kind of like, hey, world, see, I can do something that
Yeah.
requires a lot of focus. And I'm not this like flighty, chaotic person, or maybe I am, but I have found the avenue in which I can best heal myself and then serve people around me by um
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's so I think it's so empowering to have your own business, especially a creative business.
Yeah.
It's something that I always felt, whether it was, I got to deal with family stuff or children or
Yeah.
whatever problem it was at the time, that was something that no one could take away from me. That was my
Yeah.
business. I got to make all the decisions of what was happening, especially, when you're a parent of young children, which is when I started. You don't have that time.
That's amazing.
You don't have decisions of your own. You live to do what everybody else wants you to do. Now
Yeah.
the dogs rule the nest, but it's still that's still my
Same.
own. You know, I love how you really inspire others to get outside. And one of the things that I thought was just so cool that you did was your scavenger hunt for
Thanks.
your necklace. And yeah, and that was just amazing to see the response of that as well. As
That was
somebody
so cool.
who's really close to nature, and this probably doesn't really necessarily have to do with metalsmithing, but I'm always curious, have you observed a palpable change in the environment?
In what sense?
Well, with topics such as climate change,
Oh yeah.
more people living here, pollution, whatnot. I'm always curious to see if somebody who spends a lot of time in nature, especially as yourself as a wilderness guide, if
Yeah.
that's something that you've seen over the years, or if
Oh
you're
gosh,
seeing a
yeah.
nice rejuvenation that, you know, can give
I
a
would
kind of a little
say
ray of hope.
it's definitely a little bit of both. We're coming out of there's definitely huge impacts of climate change, which is a bummer. Like this winter was really tough. We barely got any snow. And so we're
Mhm.
seeing just every year. This is nice for you, but not for us. It's
I
getting
know it's been a great
warmer.
spring here.
You're like, "I love it." But, yeah, we just haven't had enough snow to be able to really engage and enjoy skiing as much as we
Yeah.
wanted. And the lakes barely froze over and things like that. And we had the rainiest summer on record last year, which caused a lot of issues for everybody around. So it has been really difficult to kind of watch that decline in a sense. But on the other hand, really cool to see people stepping up um, in pursuit of protecting these natural, beautiful spaces and working on conservation efforts. And that's something that's really important to us. Organization Protect Our Winters, just all about um, learning to better care for the environment. And so that's what I always want to do too, is set a good example for ways of engaging. with nature and caring for nature that I learned through wilderness at being a wilderness guide, which is leave no trace
Mm-hmm.
principles, which is you leave nature better than you found it. So picking up all your trash and disposing of like using the restroom accordingly. We call it the facilitaries. So always carrying out your toilet paper. Also like being more aware of the foliage that you're stepping on, you know, and also creating a safe space for animals and nature and just kind of that's why I feel so lucky that we live on 12 acres where we can be really good stewards of our
Oh
land
gosh.
and learn more about how everything works and seeing just there's even a place in nature for mosquitoes. Like it's all part of the ecosystem. So I think I'm really passionate about that. And then going back to the scavenger hunt too, that was so fun. For people that don't know, I did a really fun scavenger hunt where the first year I took one of my conelet necklaces, which is a little pine cone necklace, and I hid it on the side of Mount Washington, which is the biggest peak here in the Northeast. And then I posted a reel that had its coordinates and where to find it. But then within the reel, I talked a little bit about leave no trace principles and how like all the things that you should be aware of when you're if you're going to hike up on a mountain and dressing appropriately. So it was really cool to kind of uh,
Wow.
like tie all that together and just constantly trying to use my platform in a way too of not like I don't know, preaching it or really shoving it down people's
No.
throat, but I think like leading by example is really important. So then the next year, this past year was so fun because my husband and I and a friend had been working up to doing the presidential traverse here in the White Mountains, which is traversing all of the peaks in this range. And it's like gosh, 8,000 feet of gain and gosh, 18 miles. Don't quote me on that. My husband's better at all of the stats, but it was a very long day, very arduous. And I was like, you know what would make this even
Oh, you
cooler
did it
and
all
more
in one
fun?
day?
We did.
Oh my gosh.
It was well, we had been working up to it for years and years. And just thought it would be a really, really cool accomplishment. And also going back to it being very empowering when like I first was before I was diagnosed, I would have panic attacks that wouldn't allow me to
Mhm.
complete even like the most minimal of hikes because I would get in my head and then really panic. And so
Right.
that was a hike that we had tried to do before, but I had to turn back because I was panicking. And so it was really cool, like a lot of different facets to it, but we were able to go back and do it in a day. And I was able to conquer it and go way above and beyond, which was really cool. And then I decided to hide a pine cone necklace on the top of each peak and then do the same thing, but in a larger format where I posted the coordinates. I hid them in little like waterproof bags. I wrote like a little message in each one for even if somebody found it that didn't know what was going on. And then I talked about in even in the little note that I would leave in each conelet cache. That's what I called it. Um, just what I was doing and if they could contact me and then leave the Karen better than they found it, that it was hidden underneath. And it was really cool because it shocked me. Like these are big, big peaks, but within a week, all 7 conelets were found. And I had women that got up wicked early and hiked up the mountain to find it. I had a pair of friends that went and did the entire traverse by themselves, just as a camaraderie thing, and they each found a conelet. I had the cutest two, not one, but two different, a fiance and a boyfriend, these two men that separately got up really, really early and hiked the mountains to go find one for their women, which was really cool
Oh, wow.
and even a hut caretaker. But yeah, like kind of
Did
that's a
anybody
long
find it that didn't know? I mean, did you get kind of
yes, one
those?
did, which was cool. It was on Mount Washington, which is the most traveled peak. And also that one was the most accessible one because you can actually drive up to the summit in the
Mm.
summer. So somebody hiked down, and that was cool. That was really neat. That somebody that didn't see the reel or was gotten a hint from their honey to go find one. Um,
That would be
but
so
yeah,
cool.
I think that's a long-winded way of saying like I really love and care for the environment and see how it unfortunately has been in decline because of the impact that we've had on it. So it's really cool to find people and to engage with people in a way where we can care for it and turn around and make it better than we found it.
Yeah. Well, I think you are doing just a bang up job of exciting everybody to go out and just kind of go out in nature, spend some time out there. And I know that you're walking your talk. No,
Thanks.
I
That's
really,
what I
I
love
really
about,
feel it.
yeah.
And um, we need more people like you.
Oh, thank you. That's so
Yeah.
kind of you to say, Christine. And I think
Oh,
I do really miss, that's like the one puzzle piece is I just really missed engaging with people, like just customers and friends and people that had the same interests. And so I had played around a little bit by doing some markets. Um, but at the end of the day, I just really found my people on selling online. So the missing aspect was, yeah, just engaging with people in real life. And so that's why I decided to volunteer for inclusive ski touring, where I teach uphill skiing and make an inclusive, low pressure environment for people to try out ski touring. And then through that, I have actually connected with existing customers. One of
oh,
the
neat.
most surreal full circle moments has been in the past 2 winters, literally running into women and men that are wearing my jewelry or have gifted my jewelry, which is like a dream
That's
come true.
so
I'm like, "Oh
cool.
my gosh, I found it." Where they're like, "Oh my gosh, hi, wait, do you make jewelry?" And I'm like, "I do." And they're like, "I'm wearing one of your necklaces," as we're skiing down a slope. And I'm like, "Wow, I feel so, so lucky that I have found people that connect in the same way I do." Or even,
That
people
is
that are
so
like,
cool.
yeah, my friend and I connected over hiking, and we each got them, and they're our little friendship conelet. So that was neat. And so now I want to serve the community even more by doing more scavenger hunts, but this time making them more accessible for people that can't scale a mountain.
Yeah,
Yeah, for people that have kids or aren't physically able to do it. So I guess keep your eye out for,
that's so
and maybe even
cool.
getting some accomplices nationwide that will help me
Hey,
hide
I
some
would be
stuff.
in on that if you wanna do I'll jump on that train. That would be fun.
Right?
That would be really
Wouldn't that be
awesome.
neat? Well, and
Yeah,
also just a way to encourage people to get outside because honestly, mental health goes through the roof when you get some of that
yeah.
natural vitamin D from the sun.
I'm sure when other jewelers hear this, they're gonna wanna jump on that train too. You'll probably have no
Right?
shortage of
Hide
volunteers with that.
stuff,
Yep,
hide it all over the
we'll have it
world.
all over the world. Yep. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And then that, is kind of a neat thing too, because it goes into so many people have a desire to make their work accessible to other people.
Yeah.
And, with what we do, the costs and the
Oh
time that we put
gosh.
in, the prices aren't going to be what you find on Amazon. So that's kind of a
Well, and
nice
now
way to
the
feel like you can give back.
yeah, exactly. And making something that's a little more accessible
Yeah,
price
it's just kind
point,
of
but then
fun.
also just giving it away for free every so
Yeah.
often. Because at the end of the day, I think what I get the most fulfillment of it jewelry is just a vehicle in order to connect with other people. Like, at the end of the day, it's just not about the jewelry. Like, I love it, but it's my way that I can kinda show, as cheesy as it sounds, show people that I love them
Hmm.
or that I'm interested in them and care for them is just through just making wearable art. And so if my platform or business didn't exist for some reason for one day and just magically disappeared, that would be okay because I've already made all those incredible connections and um, have really been able to commune with people in that way.
Yeah.
I just love people.
Yeah. Um, no, that flew out of my head. See what happens when you get older? Um, so what does a typical day look like for you? Because you're quite prolific.
Oh, it's so funny you say that because I feel like I haven't been prolific recently, but it's all perception. I would
Well,
say
you
it
are in
goes
my eyes.
day
You
to
are a
day.
goddess. You are a jewelry goddess.
See, you're a jewelry goddess in my eyes. Oh my gosh. The designs you come up, I'm like, I wish I could just
Oh,
like be a fly on the wall in your brain sometimes. Be like, wow, putting stuff together like that.
you'd get tired fast.
Don't say that. You'd get overwhelmed fast in my brain just because there's way too much going on, like, dear sweet Lord. But I would say a typical day would look like I'm a night owl, so that's another nice thing about having my own business is I have the luxury of making my own hours, so I
Yeah.
kind of like to sleep in, and also sleep is the best medicine, for just re-upping that serotonin that I so badly need. So I'll usually sleep in, according to other people, and then I will have a slow morning just to kind of ramp up, to get excited and to do work, and then I'll probably spend like a little time in the morning, posting on Instagram things that I had done like the previous day with work or sharing some slices of life, and then responding to DMs and emails and just really connecting with people, in that way, and trying to answer as many messages as I can and comments, and then I'll kind of go into work. And usually I go through phases, so I'll try to do every 2 weeks different types of work. So I'll do batch work for probably 2 weeks, which is what I'm doing right now, which is like a doing a huge run of pine cone necklaces and hemlock necklaces. And I also do I carved some little chanterelle mushrooms and
I
make
saw those.
studs out
So
of
cute.
those. So oh, that's weird. One second. Where was I?
The
Yeah, so
Chantel.
I'll do batch work, and that way it's kind of like in a way good monotony,
Hmm.
which I have a job, I know what to do. I'm gonna make what 50 necklaces today, and it's just sitting, listening to podcasts or watching TV and polishing chain, patinaing, adding texture, and just having like a job and making a ton of the same thing. And then once I ship all those out, and kind of get burnt out a little bit, that's when I get excited to make the unique work and the one of a kind items. And we'll
Hmm.
have like a clean slate in order to just really focus on only a few pieces, that inspire me. And that's been lately doing gem collector necklaces. I just
Those
am
are so
so
cool. Yeah.
thanks.
And you
I
love
love
color
it.
like I do, you
Oh,
know.
I think that's why I was attracted to your work so much. It's like, oh, just the vibrancy, and
Yeah,
also
yours too.
like these I love working with natural stones because I'm like, it's come out of
Hmm.
the earth looking exactly like this. And you all sometimes all it needs is just a little setting to make it shine. So I love curating colorful stones. I think that's what I get the most fulfillment and joy from, is just through collecting and then making wearable collections. So yeah, I
Yeah,
kind of go I'll work, like, going back to the daily routine, I'll kind of after I've done a little Instagram and then a tiny bit of batch work, then I'll dedicate the rest of the afternoon to working on some new stuff, and then I usually kick off around 5 and take the dogs on a walk and do a workout just to kinda shake out the rest of the day, and then have dinner with my cute husband. And then we repeat. Or
rinse and
actually,
repeat.
most of the time after dinner, I'll go back and work because I'm a night owl and my husband goes to bed early. So I'll do more tinkering and then rinse and repeat.
I could see how doing kind of the batch work is a is kind of that, I don't want to say palate cleanser, but it just kind of keeps you going and you don't have to be in your head so much. And then
Yeah.
you can come up with those creative. It's like when that inspiration hits, you're ready,
Yeah,
you
or I
know.
think that's my biggest advice too, if like when I get into a mental block, or if I have like other creatives or a friend that's really struggling with a creative mental block or just burnout, is go back into the archives of your
Hmm.
work and what is something that you can replicate and you know how to do it really well. And maybe it's not inspiring at this point, but if you make a bunch of them and have a series of it and just have a job where you know the beginning and the
Yeah.
end, just through doing the physical muscle memory of creating a piece over and over again will, in my experience, spark inspiration for new work.
I
So it just
agree.
goes
I
back to
agree with that.
consistency, is
Yeah.
forcing yourself sometimes to do it until you trick your mind through your body, you trick your mind into being creative
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, I think just showing up and yeah, I agree with going back over your old work. That's been really helpful for me, especially lately when I've kind of gotten tripped up with things. And it's funny because most of my work isn't very replicable. In
Mm.
some ways, maybe, but it that has helped me kind of take a piece or a design that I've done before, and then I find a new way to do it. The stones are
Yes.
always different, and like
Yes.
you, I love the natural stones. It's like, I just can't believe you can pull this out of the earth and it
Oh my
looks like
gosh.
this.
Your
There's so
tourmaline
much
stuff. Oh,
it's so
so
much
good.
that's hidden under there, and it's so beautiful. I just can't believe it.
I know, and that's what makes you keep coming back for more. But that's such good advice too, is to take an old design and make it the same but different. I think
Yeah.
that's why I had a huge breakthrough when I learned prong setting, because I would make the same designs, but instead of a bezel set, I would do a prong set. And it was just like, whoa, this is so much more fun.
Yeah. So, well, I want to be respectful of your time. This has been wonderful. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about, or any advice that you have for other jewelers that we haven't already talked about? You've had some great advice for people.
Ah, likewise, gosh, I'm going to be thinking about those nuggets of wisdom that you have been dropping. Um, oh gosh, I couldn't recommend getting outside more. I know it
Yep.
seems so simple, but just through forcing yourself, honestly, through having dogs has been really great because it forces, again, consistency. It forces you to get outside no matter the weather when you have a dog, or even just, yeah,
Shh, my dogs
constantly.
don't know that.
Or just the consistency of the balance of going outside more and getting out of
Right.
your head and getting out of your space and just recreating is really important. And I think also we touched on it, is doing creative cross training. My biggest
Mm,
advice too is just, if you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself and to constantly create new exciting work, you can just really shoot yourself in the foot by, like, I will, if I'm like, oh, I'm not doing anything that's like impressive enough or creative enough, I will force myself into that mental block. And by kind of doing throwaway artwork like embroidery or adult coloring books or friendship bracelet making, it can kind of take the pressure off. And you're like, I'm just being creative just to be creative. And at the end of the day, like, not forcing yourself to like
yeah.
sell it or monetize it. Um, and then also, if you just get that creative block, just going back into the archives and remembering, why did I start metalsmithing to begin with, or any other type of art? Why did I start this to begin with?
Yep.
And just going back to your roots. And I think that's what is really inspiring. And also, a huge thing that has been really incredible for like my career is connecting with all different types of artists. So many of my friends that I'm inspired with most are do engage in art in different ways. Are ceramicists, are painters, are just leaders, even just leaders in their community, and asking them how they do it and inspiring one another
Yeah.
by shared interests, or just sharing, like, the most inspired that I get is through just sometimes scrolling through Instagram and DMing my friends, my other artist friends, about their work, and like, wow, what you're doing is really cool, and gassing one another up.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's what's the most important. And also just not being so tough on yourself and going with the ebb and flow of human emotion. And sometimes it's going with the no flow of it,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No, it does. It absolutely does. It took me a long time to really, figure out that I had cycles. And I know my
Yeah.
cycles now. And sometimes they still kind of kick me in the butt, but I can say, oh, yeah, there's a cycle again. This is what I'm going to
Yeah.
go through. And usually on the other side of that, I come out better.
There'll be a breakthrough, and it's okay to
Yeah.
like take breaks and
Yeah.
not be so hard on yourself.
But it
Stop.
did
My
take a
friend says,
while.
stop shoulding on yourself. Like,
Yeah.
I should be doing this, or I should be more creative, or I should. And it's like, who? You're putting the most pressure on yourself,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Well, and I think that's again, with what we do and it being so isolating. There's so much that you're just winging. You're just trying to figure it out. You're trying to do all the things. The business courses don't always fit with what we're doing.
It's
And
true.
and so it's easy to get to really get kind of swept under with the shoulds, and my business doesn't look like this business, or why
The
the hell am I going through
comparison
this
game.
cycle again? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
So I guess
advice.
being kind to yourself. I'm so bad at it sometimes. I'm constantly working on it, but I think that's where I've found the most fulfillment in trying to not should on myself. And also just through connecting with other people that
Yeah.
maybe aren't doing the exact same thing, but have wisdom that they could share, and we can kind of commune together in
Yeah.
that way.
That's why I love these conversations. I say it's definitely a selfish venture for me because I get so much inspiration and I just feel so inspired and I don't feel so alone, hearing, okay, you're going through
Yes.
that too.
Honestly, that's why I've loved listening to the conversations that you've had. And also, thank you so much for starting this community through the Slowmade podcast. It's really, really cool
Thank you.
to
Yeah,
all
I'm
the different
excited about
facets of
it.
life.
I'm
Yeah.
excited. We're
And you're
getting
showing
there.
up consistently and doing it. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. I'm inspired as well.
Well,
So
thank you.
keep
I'm
it up.
I'm I'm hoping I can continue to show up through the summer.
Oh yeah. Well,
We
if you
are
need to
we
take a
are in the
break to go
sun, in the lake, but no,
oh
I've
yeah, go gallivant.
it's this has been one of the only things that I've loved just as much as metalsmithing. I'm surprised.
Oh, no. I mean, it goes hand in hand. I think that's why it's really cool. It's
Yeah.
very natural.
Yeah. Well, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to sit with me
Oh
for a
my
bit.
gosh. Thanks for asking me. This was a huge
Yeah.
honor. And I mean, as you know, I've loved your work for years. So it's really cool to get to connect, quote unquote, in real life.
Yeah. All right. Well, how can people best find you?
Oh, yeah. I love connecting on Instagram. Love being social in that way. So you can find me at the Wild Pine. And then my website, where I sell my work and just share a little bit about my story, is thewildpine.com. So would
Fantastic.
love to connect with you via both those avenues.
Great. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.